I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly, to explain House File 1999.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and members, good afternoon. Mr. Speaker and members, off to a good start. In 2008, Minnesota voters voted to amend the Constitution and added sales tax of 3/8 of 1%. And this is the foundation of the Legacy Fund. So this bill and the 2023 Legacy Bill, over $823 million, invests in our natural resources, in the clean waters, in our parks and trails of Minnesota and cultural heritage. There's no other state that has this, an entire country that dedicates funds like this. And truly, we're an envy of other states all over the country. And polls still have this quite popular, at over 70% popularity rate with the voters. Minnesota's forests, prairies, and wetlands received nearly $127 million to restore, enhance, and protect them for future generations. Decades of overuse development have severely diminished the abundance of habitat and wildlife that were part of our state's landscape. Legacy funds are instrumental in saving our pollinators and providing habitat, vegetation, and even sequestering carbon. And they're just doing amazing things with restoring the habitat, prairies and wetlands, and planting thousands of trees, greatly enhancing our great outdoors in Minnesota. With over 11,000 lakes, well past our 10,000 we hear about lakes, 92,000 miles of rivers and streams, Minnesota has more freshwater shoreland than any other state except for Alaska. The 2023 Legacy Bill invests $319 million, making sure our lakes and rivers and streams are safe for fishing and swimming, and making sure that we have a clean supply of drinking water. Through the pandemic, Minnesota has relied heavily on our parks and trails, safe places to exercise and connect with friends and family. There's over $136 million invested in this area. Just the Metro alone, there's over 60 million uses on the Metro Parks and Trails system. And you can see that the last couple of days as Minnesotans take the great opportunity to get outside and enjoy this new weather that we're seeing. We're investing significantly more in BIPOC and LGBTQIA organizations than in previous years in the legacy appropriations. And we're investing over $195 million in arts and cultural habitat, or arts and cultural heritage appropriations, and celebrating all of Minnesotans and getting to communities that we've not been able to get to in the past. So starting off in Article 1 of the bill is the outdoor heritage part of the bill. And this picks up $171 million of recommendations that came from mostly from the Lessard-Sams Council. Many of you, if you're not aware, the Lessard-Sams Council is a council that was set up, and they vet projects. As you can imagine, to get to this $171 million, they had over $360 million of requests, and they went through those and vetted them and decided on the projects that they were going to do. And so this is quite a process, and then they submit that to the legislature. There's over 121 million acres that are being projected, which is amazing when you really think about it, just in this one bill. 121 million acres, or 121,000, not million, acres. 80,000 of those are in our prairies part of the state. 13,000 are in the forest part of our state. 20,000 1,000 acres are within wetlands, and 7,000 are in the habitat. So, and there's also a great program that is a CPL program that reaches out to people that are smaller groups that might not have gotten access to these funds in the past, and that's up to about $9.5 million. I think Representative Fabian, some of you probably don't even know who he is, but he was real involved, and Representative Hansen in starting that. And so on to Article 2, the Clean Water Council has recommendations, and this bill picks up many of the recommendations. The bill as it stands before you is $320 million in appropriations, and these are split essentially between several state agencies and go around Department of Agriculture, Pollution Control, Natural Resources, Soil and Water Conservation Districts. Bowser gets one of the biggest chunks doing these one watershed plans, $39 million. And there's some really amazing things in here. Hopefully you've taken a look at Amy's brief or our brief from our team on our side, from Molly. But there's also a great effort to work with farmers, efforts to reduce chloride, working with septic systems, so people that can't afford, and trying to help them to be compliant, and working, I already said, farmers. There's also some PFAS efforts in here, and culverts, and that sort of thing. Switching on to Article 3, which is the Parks and Trails part of the bill, is, like I mentioned earlier, it's broken down into 3 categories. So the Metro gets about $54 million in this bill. And again, that's reaching about 60 million users a year. And with that, you can imagine the wear and tear, and that's with all the systems. I heard or Chair Hornstein's bill this morning, and all the potholes, but it's the same with our trails. And we, to get people to keep using them, you want to make sure the quality is good. But we also partner with the Greater Minnesota Parks and Trails folks, and quite honestly, they're doing a great job of shotgunning parks and trails all over the state, and doing good work on that area. And the DNR, we is getting $54 million, and again, this goes to their properties all over the state, and they're doing good work. You may have heard of the ICANN program, and that is funded through this the legacy funds, and what that does is it gets people out in the outdoors that might not have been lucky enough to have a boat on their own or a kayak, or, and gets them out fishing and doing other things. We've added some new programming to create maybe a safe, not maybe, but a safe place for other people that have been left on the sidelines. So I'm really excited about that work. And so I think it's a strong effort in this Parks and Trails area, and we're also really focusing on trying to make it more accessible, because we know that a lot of Minnesotans are mobility challenged, and to work on that to make sure that they're more and more accessible for all Minnesotans. On to Article 4 is the arts and cultural part of the bill. And there's $195 million to celebrate our shared cultural history and support the arts. We increase funding for the regional arts councils who do some of the smaller grants. We added efforts to try to get to more youth throughout this bill, but certainly in the arts area, so we're really proud of that. We added money for increased education funding for the Arts Board for arts programs. In this bill, we fund libraries, county fairs in every one of your districts, libraries in every one of your districts, public broadcasting all over, including NPR and public TV, and also Ampers, which covers so much of our state, and work with some of our Native American tribes and do some amazing programming all over the state. And I really hope that I'm just going to step off my speech for a second, but that you take a look at some of the work that's done, because they have done amazing programming in all three of these areas that are telling the story of the legacy funds and the story of Minnesotans that are working in arts and other things. So the zoos of Minnesota are getting money, the Duluth and the one here at Como, and the big Minnesota Zoo. Wilderness Inquiry, again, that's a program that gets over 11,000 youth out in that have never been out in a canoe. I mean, think of what a game changer that can do for people to get on the water and, you know, just to have that opportunity. Science museums. So there's competitive grants in here, and we also have the children's museums and the science museums. And also, we've incorporated a strong effort to have a strong position for children's museums all over the state of Minnesota, including some of the smaller ones to the biggest one in here in St. Paul. So the money, we're also trying to reach to do some capacity building, trying to get money to the people that have not received money in the past, because sometimes in this space, people have been left on the sidelines. And so we worked through the humanities, and there was over 167 different cultural groups that received last biennium, and that was at $5 million, and we've almost tripled that. So we're hoping to greatly expand that and get that to grow into to be even a bolder and a bigger program. And I also included larger grants, because in that space, there's some groups that certainly could warrant more money. So we've added also some Hmong language preservation efforts in here. And we're also included all of the Minnesota Indian Affairs Council requests, language preservation, protecting graves, and burial mounds. I think Representative Erdahl has been a great leader in that space. I think this is a good bill. Our committee members have listened to state agencies, and we have made a very strong effort to make this a better bill and to listen and to be to make Minnesota a much better place to live. We've increased education opportunities, increased free access. We were in Ways and Means today, and I think, or was that yesterday? It's all kind of a blur. But Chair Hansen and Representative Graffalo were going back and forth, but we've added free days all over in this bill, trying to get people access that typically haven't had access. But I think we have a good bill here that you can all go home and be proud of, and go to your voters and say that that you can. I think it'd be a proud bill for you to work on and vote for today. So with that, I'll stand for. I know we have some amendments, and with that, I'll stand for them and questions.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Farr moves to amend House Law number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A15.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from LeSueur, Representative Farr, to explain the A15 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair Lilly. My first year on legacy, so I appreciate all that I've gotten to learn here. And so as I took a look at the bill and made some comparisons to past years, it was brought to my attention that this language was in the last biennium's legacy omnibus bill. And so it simply says no grants awarded under this subdivision may be used for travel outside the state of Minnesota. I think this is a simple amendment, and I hope that you're willing to take this, Chair Lilly. I know there's been some discussion there. But again, a simple amendment, a common sense amendment.
Further discussion to the A15 amendment. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative, I think it is an amendment that we can work with. And it was in last year's bill, and my apologies to our team that I didn't know it was in last year's bill, and we have not heard back from Humanities that that's a problem. We do have some concerns, you know, for people that live in border cities and everything. I was hoping that you might consider withdrawing and that we could work on it, but if not, then I guess I would encourage members to vote how they feel.
Mr. Speaker, I request a roll call.
Representative Farr has requested a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A15 amendment. Representative Farr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So we talked, or Chair Lilly talked significantly about the differences between previous omnibus bills, legacy omnibus bills, and this one. And so that's what we're talking about right here. We're talking about leaving the language in if you care to know, 107.2 in last biennium's legacy omnibus bill was this language. I would also like to draw your attention to this bill that's before us in lines 84.28. 84.28, this is the Minnesota, and that's under this is where I'm proposing the amendment. This is the Minnesota Humanities Center. It's not the South Dakota Humanities Center or the Florida Humanities Center. It's the Minnesota Humanities Center. So I think this makes sense. It's something we've done before, and so I would ask for a green vote.
Further discussion to the A15 amendment. Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the A15 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 67 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Backer moves to amend House File Number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A14.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Traverse, Representative Backer, to explain the A14 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What this amendment does is, in the bill right now, we have two different appropriations for children's museums. If you look on page 86, basically it says if a children's museum has an operation budget of over $3 million, they get a certain dollar amount, and if your operational budget under $1 million, you get a certain you get to go into a pool. And one of the things that the chair has done very well in this bill is really try to make it more of a grant process to be more inclusive. And that's what we're doing here, because quite frankly, we only have one children's museum that has a budget over greater than $3 million, which is St. Paul. And then all the other ones across the state of Minnesota, Mankato, Fergus Falls, Brainerd, and so many other ones are under that threshold. So what happens with this type of language, we're giving favoritism to one. And a child in Traverse County should be treated the same thing as a child in Ramsey County. And they should just go, my amendment just takes the money and puts it into one pool, a grant process for everybody. So that's all it does, because all those children museums should have the equal right and should go through that grant process based on the merit of an application and not a certain dollar amount of the budget, of their operating budget. And that's what my amendment does, is takes those two pools of money, puts it into one, so now all children's museums across the state has that same total amount access to that money. That's what my amendment does, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Lead Backer, thank you for your work on our committee this year. I think we have the same goal from trying to reach smaller organizations, and that's why we've kind of done it the way we've done it. So that was intentional, because we wanted to separate the bigger, quite honestly, the St. Paul, because if we were to add them in the matrix, it would just probably overwhelm many of the small ones. So we were quite intentional about to do what you're trying to achieve, to reach the small ones. So I'm just gonna ask members to vote no on the amendment, and I do pledge to you that I'll continue to work on this issue with you.
Further discussion to the A14 amendment. I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Backer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I talk, roll call, I would request a roll call.
Representative Backer requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A14 amendment. Representative Backer.
And Chair, I would not disagree with you that it's going to be more challenging for smaller children's museums to, they don't have the staff like the St. Paul Museum. But one of the requests that we had of all the other children's museums is that they would get a certain allocation of $150,000. That was brought in front of the committee. We had a lively discussion about that. But how the bill is worded right now, St. Paul gets that appropriation because they're the only museum that has that type of a budget. So what's good for one museum should be good for all the museums. You know, we're one Minnesota. We hear that constantly. We're one Minnesota. What we're basically are saying with this here is, if you're not a certain size, then you go into a separate pool. But if you're a certain size, you're going to be earmarked. You're being earmarked because that museum, we only have one museum, is earmarked. So it provides favoritism for that one museum. The Children's Museum in Fergus Falls, those children who uses that, which has a huge regional, should have the same access to the same funds. Breckenridge is another one in my district. But we're saying to those families, because your size of your museum is not big enough, you don't get an earmark. So I respectfully would ask to support this amendment, because we're one Minnesota, and one child in greater Minnesota is the same thing as a child in the metro area and the suburban area. Thank you, members.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A14 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 59 ayes and 69 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Backer moves to amend House Law number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment is coded A11.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker, to explain the A11 amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is Baker and not Backer today, so thank you. I want to make sure that's clear, but that has happened a few times. So, members, thank you. I wanted to bring forward an important amendment to a group that I have worked with very closely since I arrived here in the Minnesota House back in 2015. The group Kajug is an important organization in the state of Minnesota. I have worked with them side by side with workforce issues, with substance use disorder, and their work is tireless in the especially the metro area, but they also are doing good work around the state of Minnesota. The FANCA program that should be identified in this bill, in my mind, is clearly missing. FANCA is their work towards cultural art and how they communicate with each other, and also how they communicate with us in the Western nation. These important citizens in Minnesota have contributed so much to us, but yet that culture is one, members, that we are still trying to understand because it's much different than many of us. My elders in my community, we talk about things that I really want to better understand, especially when it comes to, again, substance use disorder, the youth, elders, their culture is so much different. So, members, I'm asking that we take this amendment, A11, that allows this organization to have $2 million, $1 million each year, to focus in on the FANCA program. They, a couple years ago, did a statewide Chronicles of Diaspora, which was a play that they put together with funding that we did back in 2015. That, I think, was when Chair Erdahl chaired the Legacy Committee. And they went around the state of Minnesota and were communicating not only with their own community, but also ones that were trying to understand their culture, understand their ways of doing things that are different than us, whether it's religion, family dynamics, and they were communicating through arts. This unique FANCA program does something that nobody else does really in the state of Minnesota. They really do understand how to bridge communications through the arts. So I'm hoping, members, that we can accept this amendment today. This is a special organization, one that I'm super proud of. I have been spending the last 8 years of my time here to make sure my caucus knows how important this Kajug operation is and what they do on many levels in Minnesota here to bring us along to understand their culture in so many ways. So, members, I do hope that we can support this. I will wait to see how the chair will respond to this if I ask for a roll call or not, but I do hope that this $2 million is looked at as incredibly important for that community that needs direct appropriation. And I know the other body has recognized this. They put money to this organization. So, members, I do hope you support the bill, the amendment A11 today. Thank you.
Further discussion to the A11 amendment. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Baker. I was told by the other one that you had a great name, except you were missing a C or something. He said he'd buy me coffee if I made that joke. It's not that funny, I guess. That's on you. No. You know, this is a great organization, and I'm glad you're working with them. And clearly, we've had them in and before our committee, And believe me, they touched our hearts. And they have been recipients, quite honestly, of legacy funds, and they're hoping to get more. And we're committed to that. And there is opportunities in our bill. Like I said, we've increased our cultural grants almost 3 times of what they were in previous bienniums. We were kind of hitting a wall across the street as far as how much we could fund that. And we funded over 167 organizations. So we're a little leery of giving, 1/10 to one group. Not that it's a bad group, but I'm just a little bit, I think it needs to be thought out. This is an amazing group, clearly, and the outreach that they're doing of, our new Americans, new Minnesotans, and for all of us is incredible. But at this time, I just going to recommend that we vote no, and I think you'll be happy with the final bill as it comes through. And this group will, I'm strong belief they'll be in a strong position. Thank you.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Candy, Ojai, Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I was hoping that we would be able to move this one through and show the House position when it moves into conference. Mr. Speaker, I do request a roll call on this
Representative
amendment.
Baker requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A11 amendment. Representative Baker.
And just a quick final statement, Mr. Speaker and members. I don't want to make this go on too long, but again, I thought a really good article in the St. Cloud Times that was written back when the play, The Chronicles of Diaspora, was moving around the state. They said the idea behind the Chronicles of the play is that some issues that are tearing at the Somali community, the stresses of cultural integration, domestic violence, mental health, and drug abuse, are so taboo that they're not widely mentioned. So this is important to them. This is important to their understanding our culture with theirs. And again, I urge members that know that we can put this appropriation to this group in a very positive manner. Let's send it to conference with this statement. They need all of this dollars. This is a good organization. I really support. Members, again, final request for a green vote on the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The clerk will take the roll on the A11 amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 53 ayes and 73 nays, the motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Heinzman moves to amend House Law number 1999, the second engrossment. The amendment was coded A17.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heitzman, to explain the A17 amendment.
Thank you, Speaker. This amendment prohibits taxpayer dollars from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from being used on projects that promote domestic terrorism or other criminal activities. Members that have been around here long enough can probably recall that there has been some issues in this subject area in the past. The one specific project that comes to mind is a video game. It became quite notorious, and I have a Detroit Lakes online story that we could talk about. But I'll just mention that this particular video game that was paid for with Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund money depicted the destruction of pipelines, bombing actually of pipelines, trucks, and refineries. We've had this amendment in the past. I think I might have even introduced it a time or two, but it just hasn't seemed to make it into the final language of the bill. So I'm working on trying to get this across the line today and would ask for members' support. Thank you. And I'd request a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Heisman requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A17 amendment. Is there any further discussion to the A17 amendment? I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
I think it's unfortunate that we're playing or doing these type of amendments, but vote how you want.
Further discussion. I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heisman.
Thank you, Speaker. No, I don't think this is playing at all. I think it's a very serious issue. I think the taxpayers expect that when legacy dollars are being distributed to projects, that they are projects that are very well deserving. Projects that depict violence, projects or proposals that depict acts of terrorism. I don't see people clamoring for that. I think that this is something that absolutely needs to be addressed, and once again would request a green vote.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A17 amendment. Members who wish to vote, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 80 ayes and 11 nays, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Heisman moves to amend House Law Number 1999, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A12.
I recognize the author of the amendment, the member from Crow Wing, Representative Heisman, to explain the A12 amendment.
Thank you again, Speaker. This amendment prohibits arts and cultural heritage funds from being awarded to organizations that have had civil or criminal sexual assault or harassment judgments against them, or to organizations where the president, CEO, board member, or the like has held a similar position in an organization that had a sexual assault or harassment judgment against them in the past 24 months. The goal is simple. Organizations that are led by bad actors that allow this awful behavior and have judgments against them should not be able to apply for taxpayer dollars. Speaker, I would ask for a roll call on the amendment.
Representative Heisman requests a roll call vote. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call vote on the A12 amendment. Representative Heisman.
Thank you, Speaker. No, it's as I said, a very straightforward amendment, and I could go into more detail, and if we need to do that, I'm prepared to do so. I would continue to ask for a green vote of support.
Further discussion to the A12 amendment. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Again, it's sad to me. No one wants money to go to offenders, but vote how you, members vote how you feel.
I recognize the author of the amendment, Representative Heitzman.
Thank you, Speaker. And just once again, this is about accountability. This is about being a steward of the taxpayers' dollars and holding organizations and their members to the highest level. That's why I proposed the amendment today and would appreciate your support.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the A12 amendment. Members who wish to vote, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 77 ayes and 13 nays, the motion prevails and the amendment is adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended.
Third reading, House File Number 1999, as amended.
Third reading as amended. Discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And I'm not going to talk a real long time here, but I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson today. I've been involved with the Legacy Committee before it was the Legacy Committee. It's called the Heritage Committee once with Representative Yaros, 2008. And so up until this year, I've been associated with the Legacy Committee. This is the first time I've not been on it. And so I'm well acquainted with a lot of the struggles that our chairs and our committees have gone through over the years. You think it would be easy to appropriate $600, $700, $800 million. You'd think it would be easy, wouldn't you? But it's not so easy. It never has been. Well, Representative Gunther did get a bill through once, 134 to nothing. And then we had Representative Kahn chairing, Representative Murphy chairing. They had some ups and downs, but usually got bills passed with good margins. I had 2 tours of duty as chair of the committee. We dealt with the percentages for the arts, for parks. We set those. We dealt with the continual discussion about supplant versus supplement. Administrative costs, those were big problems. I can remember finishing a bill. It passed committee. And I'm walking in, we were obviously in charge then. I walked to the 4th floor corner, and the majority leader accosted me a little bit and said, you know that bill you just passed in committee? And I said, yeah. He said, well, there's some problems with it. Do it over again. I said, what do you want me to do? He said, I don't know, fix it. We got problems. And so we fixed it. And we passed it and, you know, got some good things. And then, here's something that might be news to you guys. Sometimes caucuses play games with bills. And the second tour of duty as chair, the bill came up before the floor. It was the last day of session. This is final passage. And in negotiations, I knew there were a couple of problems, and I had talked to the Senate negotiators about doing away with those problems, and they assured me that they were taken out of the bill. And then I get to the floor, and lo and behold, members from the other side of the aisle are pointing out to me that those two items that the Senate had told me were gone had simply been moved to another part of the bill. This created a problem for me. And so someone moved that we should send the bill back to conference committee. Keeping in mind, this is the last day of the session, and we're going to go to conference committee. Well, as a good chair does, I argued fervently against sending the bill to conference committee. And then I realized in the middle of the debate that they were right. We needed to go to conference committee. And so we did. We went over to the Senate, and the Senate refused to talk to us. And so I came back and said, no agreement with the Senate, could we move it back? And by a vote of 69 to 65, the bill came back. And then you guys filibustered it the rest of the day. We didn't get a legacy bill that year because my good friends, and I think Representative Hornstein, you probably were part of this, filibustered until the end of session. And then we came back in special session. And by the way, no bill passed that year. And we had to come back in special session. And the problems that we had were fixed in 15 minutes and passed in special session. So thank you very much. What I'm trying to do today is just talk a little bit about, again, the history and the trials and tribulations of dealing with this committee, which, again, one would think would be easy to do, but it's not. And so, with that said, I do commend Representative Lilly for his diligent work on this bill. I have a few things in there, maybe could be a little bit better, but he's done a good, diligent job of trying to put together a good bill for something that should be easy, but frankly isn't. Thank you.
Further discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Herr.
Thank you, Speaker. I wanted to just take a quick opportunity to talk about the work that was done in legacy. I know that not everybody was happy. There was a lot of direct appropriations were taken out of this bill. But I wanted to just say quickly that I've never been in legacy before. This was my first time. And when I joined legacy, it was when I was put on this committee, it was really important for me to learn why the committee does what it does. I didn't want to specifically look at who's getting funded and why, but I wanted to understand statutorily what is our responsibility. And why do we give some people direct appropriations and why do we not give others? And to me, when we get to choose winners and losers, generally the losers are organizations and people who don't understand systems and structures and how to navigate them. People have been traditionally excluded in the past. And so my whole involvement in this legacy work was to really work closely with Chair Lilly to say, what can we do and what is the community saying to us? And so I met a number of times with community organizations in the arts and also in Parks and Trails. Those who, I met with Parks and Trails to say, well, who comes to your parks? And when we give this money, who gets the benefit from it? And who comes? And how do we ensure that we track that people from low-income communities get to use how we're funding this? And people who might not have transportation issues, they may have transportation issues, how do they get out in order to use some of these parks and trails? And everybody was extremely helpful in wanting to do right by people. And everyone was willing to make changes. And when I met with arts organizations, and I met with large arts organizations, really small ones, BIPOC organizations, and I asked them, well, what do you need? What do you want? And many of them said, there are a lot of things happening in community now that when there is some kind of event such as, like at Harding High School when there was a stabbing of a student, we call the arts community to come in to heal community. When there are issues within communities that are generational and impacts, then we say, well, how does arts heal people? But they don't get any funding to do that kind of work. And so when I talked to Chair Lilly about how do we deal with emerging events within our communities, How can we deal with that? Chair Lilly said, well, let's put some funds into this because people shouldn't be expending their own resources, and when they're doing work that benefits the entire community, we should fund that work. And so there's a pot of money in here, a small amount, in order to help communities address emerging issues within those communities and how to heal and how to support communities during times of trauma and difficulties. I also was really thankful for Chair Lilly for for creating pots of fund for small nonprofits, saying, we're too small to have our own grant writers to continue to pursue funding. We always lose to the larger organizations. And so we need capacity building. And so there was some money put into there for capacity building, and this generally impacts small organizations and BIPOC-led organizations. And so I was really happy to see some of these changes that we made to say, how do we change ourselves structurally so that we become more accessible to other people? I also want to point out that there is a pool of fund in there that we've never had before for the LGBTQ plus community, in which we've never looked at that and said, we should absolutely be supporting the work within these communities. And so I wanted to just say that sometimes some of these things get overlooked by the larger pools of funds that are allocated. But I do want to just point out that these are really important funds that actually really will have great impact on our communities. And I want to just last say that, you know, Chair Lilly really empowered us as members to actually work directly with the Humanities Centers, all of the organizations which get money in order to grant out. And that if we want structural change, we have to actually go to the organizations that are giving up this money so that we're not the ones picking winners and losers. They're the ones that are in community, talking to organizations, vetting organizations, and so allowing us to actually do our job and saying we don't just pass laws, but we actually hold entities accountable for the money that we give them. And so I just wanted to say that there was a lot of work that went into this bill. Not everybody is happy because there were people who got direct appropriations in the past that did not get them. Organizations I cared about that I wanted to have direct appropriations to did not get them either. And so I want us to all know that as we are looking at this bill and saying, well, why did certain things not happen the way they have in the past, is that it was an attempt in order for us to be more fair and equitable in how we do this work. So I just want to say I was really proud of the work that we did do and what we were able to put together in this bill, and thank Chair Lilly for the work.
Further discussion of House File 1999. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Hussein.
Thank you. This bill is a great bill, and we are investing in Minnesota to improve outdoor heritage, clean water. This has been a fun legacy, and I want to thank Chair Lilly for the great work that you have done to address and invest for our young generations, make sure that they learn in cultural, and we're trying to address that, the whole state of Minnesota. This is a really great bill. Minnesota has a rich history when it comes to cultural, and we want to make sure that we are investing clean water, make sure that our kids can swim at clean lakes and clean rivers. I'll ask both of my colleagues to support this great bill, and we're trying to address the Minnesota what they deserve as a legacy vice chair. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Cleavorn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, this is really a great bill. And I just want to give a shout out to you, Representative Lilly, for doing the good work to keep our water clean and to accept the recommendations of the Clean Water Council. There's nothing more precious to the human body than water. We must all have clean water to drink. And this provides protection for our wellheads. This provides protection for our rivers and streams. And I'm particularly grateful for your inclusion of the Forever Green provision. It's how we met when I first came to the legislature, and I just thank you for your continued support of these recommendations. There is something in this bill for everyone, no matter where you live in the state of Minnesota. This is truly a One Minnesota bill. Thank you for your commitment to the arts. Thank you for your commitment to our outdoor heritage, and thank you for supporting our clean water. I tip my hand to you. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Traverse, Representative Backer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I would have to say this is a fun committee. Vice Chair summed it up. It is fun. The chair, we can poke fun, and at the same time, we have serious business. You know, this bill spends $860 million. It's a lot of money, And enjoyed the debate that we had from both sides of the aisle. I do want to take a shout out and thank the committee members on both sides of the aisle, the staff on both sides of the aisle, but of course, Amy Zipcode on our side. She makes us look a whole lot better than what we are. And I know that's the same thing with Mike on the other side too. So really appreciate that. And just working together. And thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I recognize the author of the bill, the member from Ramsey, Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Thank you for our discussion today. First off, I just really want to thank our staff. You know, we have some amazing nonpartisan staff in this building. We are so blessed. Mary Davis, Helen Roberts, Janelle Taylor, Brad Hagemeyer. We're kind of focused on our area. I feel sorry for the rest of you because we have the best. They're just amazing. We're so lucky to have them. And just mention Amy Zipko on the GOP side. She did good work and sometimes too good of work. But maybe today, no. Anyways, no. Thank you, Amy, for your work. And of course, I want to thank my CLA, Madison Priestley. Thank you very much for your hard work and setting up the appointments and everything that it takes to run a committee like this. And certainly Mike Molzon is great, and Molly Peterson, just a fantastic researcher. We're just really blessed. So thank you. And thank you to the committee members. You know, we did have, I thought, really a great discussion. Yeah, we had some really fun days. We had the zoos come in, and we had the fun stuff that you do with that, or, you know, the Wilderness Inquiry came in, and it wasn't quite as fun as the year we had Jay in a boat, but Chair Zhang, I don't know where he is, but we had him in a life jacket and a canoe one year. That was special, but we didn't have that this year. But anyways, you know, we had a lot of fun. But we also had serious discussion and try to use these funds wisely, because it is such a blessing. We are so blessed to have this as a state. And when I first started, I meant this sincerely. Other states are really jealous, but this is. I almost call this sacred money in a way, because the voters proved this in a ballot. And so when I say to you, we did take this money serious. And the thing that we are doing different, though, a little bit, than we're trying to reach a lot of the new citizens, a lot of our new neighbors. And we're really leaning into that. Or some of the people that might have felt left on the side. So we're trying to make it so people can get access to the grants and do that. You know, a lot of the fingerprints that are in here are Chair Erdahl's and my previous chairs. Thank you for your leadership on this. And he's always kicking me in the side or pushing me to do good things or stay out of trouble. But anyways, again, thank you to all the members that are on the committee. I really was lucky to have such a strong committee, and I'm really proud of the work. This is really a popular thing in Minnesota. 70%, when I first started, I said that, of voters approve this. And still to this day. And, you know, we're in about the 15th year of a 25-year deal. And so we're well positioned. And I think I can look all you in the face and say that we are being good stewards of this money. We are looking at it. We're looking at it, and we're making sure that these monies go out. And they go all over Minnesota. There's land buying all over in improvements in everyone's districts, all over the state of Minnesota. Libraries, just on and on. County fairs, just on it. You know, these investments, if you can't win a campaign on this stuff, I've said this before, you are a terrible politician. Because there's something in here that you can win. There's arts projects that are in your local districts that are doing amazing work. Again, I thank you for hearing this bill today. You know, we're going to go to conference committee, and you know, we're going to duke it out with those tough senators. But you know, I'm looking forward to that. Again, I appreciate your time today. I would challenge you to vote green today. This is really good for Minnesota, and we are taking this money serious, and we are good stewards, all of us, our committee, and all of us members. It's work that you all can be proud of.
Further discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Stearns, the Minority Leader, Representative Demuth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And today, members, I appreciate the discussion and the opportunity that we've had as we've looked forward to this bill. Two of the things that I am very pleased with is the inclusion on this bill of the two amendments. The first one, Amendment A12, and that is to prohibit arts and cultural heritage fund dollars from being awarded to an organization who has had a civil or criminal sexual assault harassment judgment within the last 24 months, or any organization where the CEO, executive board member, or others has held a similar position in an organization that has had a sexual harassment or assault judgment within the last 24 months. That was the right decision to vote yes on that and to have that included in the bill. The second amendment that I was very pleased to see go on was the A17 that would prohibit funding from the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund from being used on projects that promote domestic terrorism or criminal activities. Those were the right decisions for Minnesotans. Those were the right decisions to make sure that our tax dollars are not going to fund criminals. Unfortunately, the way that this bill has come together has grave concerns. And with that, our caucus will be voting no today. And Mr. Speaker, I would request a call of the House.
Representative Demuth requests a call of the House.
And I would request a roll call.
Seeing 10 hands, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. Further discussion to House File 1999. I recognize the member from Hennepin, the Majority Leader, Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Leader Dameth, for getting members in their seats a little earlier so they could hear my third reading speech. I appreciate it a lot. Members, Minnesotans value our state's parks and trails, our arts, our cultural heritage, and our clean water. And that's why, as Chair Lilly mentioned, we voted in 2008 to raise the revenue ourselves overwhelmingly to make sure that we are funding these in a sustained and dedicated way into the future. The Legacy Amendment, when it passed, was both the largest state conservation member and the largest arts funding measure in United States history. And that should make us really proud. I know that I benefit greatly from this when my kids and my family go out and we see that legacy sign, whether it's a museum or a park or an art display. And I can just get a jolt of pride knowing that that is something that we paid for collectively, that that's something that we stepped up as a state and decided was something that we wanted to make sure this was a state that was better for us all to live in, to work in, to play in. And I'm especially proud that this bill today, that the Legacy Committee members and that Chair Lilly worked very hard to make sure that it is making the funding more accessible to those who have oftentimes been left behind in getting legacy funding. It more than doubles the amount of funding for cultural identity grants to BIPOC and LGBTQ organizations, and it makes sure that each fund contains requirements that anyone who receives a grant has to show how funds are being used to reach diverse communities. And for the first time ever, the legacy funds are investing $1.5 million in capacity building for small organizations that have historically lacked resources to submit grant applications or try to get funding in other ways. Members, the things in these bills are not partisan and not political. It is funding projects across the state. It doesn't matter if you're in a rural part of our state, the urban part of our state. We're funding efforts to protect wildlife habitat in Hennepin County, but we're also restoring fisheries in Aiken, Cass, and Crow Wing and Hubbard counties. We're doing shoreline protection for turtle habitat in Lake Nokomis in my city of Minneapolis, but we're also restoring prairie in Martin and Martin County. There's no reason we can't pass this bill today with an overwhelming bipartisan support, just like we had when voters voted on this in 2008 in overwhelming margins. Minnesotans understand that you get what you pay for, and Minnesotans value paying to protect the outdoors and to enrich our lives through arts and cultural heritage. This bill is about what makes it so special to be a Minnesotan, to live in this state, to raise families in this state, to work in this state. And this bill in particular is a transformational bill that can make our state an even better place to live and work. So I want to thank Chair Lilly and the Legacy Committee for your hard work putting this budget today. Every member in this chamber should be voting green. Thank you.
The clerk will take the roll on House File 1999. The House is under call. Members, please vote. Members, please vote. The clerk will close the roll. There being 69 ayes and 59 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to.